Okay. Qué feo, pelado.
Usted.
Me asustó, creía que era un monstruo que salió por aquí.
Ah, ¿qué quería? ¿Una vieja?
No,
No creo que a tu mujer le gustaría eso. ¿Cómo estás?
no me... deme una advertencia, no me asuste así. Está feo. All right, bro.
No, que andaba todo el día en el patio. My dad had me doing yard work.
Okay, that's good, man. That's good. So, all right. So we pretty much cover the from you can. I would recommend you to read between pages. Let me see. Yeah, we cover on the page 45. We were talking about the cycles. We covered that, and then we started talking about the processes, the project management processes. So let's go over that really quick before we continue. So the project management processes is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet the project requirements. So that's what you need. Basically, what you need to do, you're going to apply knowledge, you're going to apply some tools and techniques, and based on this methodology, you have 47 processes. So you have they're always going to work the same way. Each of the 47 processes are going to, Each of them is going to have three elements. It's going to have one element that is inputs. Then it's going to have tools and techniques. And then it's going to have outputs. So in some information that you might get somewhere else, I don't know if you like to Google about processes and stuff, you're going to see ITTOs. So those are input, tools and techniques, and outputs. So those are the elements that form the process for project management, that is. So, and you also have product-oriented process, but the ones that we need to focus on are the project management process. They tell you the PMP book only covers project management processes. I mean, that doesn't mean that they're not product-oriented processes, but they're not part of the scope of this, and you won't be evaluated in regards to those. But it's good to know. Some prerogatives here is that processes are connected between each other, and they're aligned and connected with the other process, and they are related. So it's a logical sequence that follows, and it's also important to keep in mind that projects, they don't exist in a vacuum. That's when a lot of people have trouble, even the teams, because we tend to focus on our little parcel, but in reality, projects are linked to other projects, and then forming programs, and then forming portfolios. So everything is related, and at the end of the day, everything is going to be tied up to organizational goals or objectives that the company might have. So everything's going to be related. Usually that's the way it goes. So we're going to be focusing in the project management processes. So for that, the PMP book has, so we have 47 processes that are divided in groups. So you have 5 groups. What are those 5 groups?
5 groups? Like management and control.
Oh, but you gotta learn them in order, because they kind of go. That's the best way for you, so you don't get confused. So initiating, planning, executing,
management and control, and closing.
Closing, correct. All right.
So
initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. You gotta learn those by heart. So, and we're gonna cover them in detail. We're gonna go by process group, and then if you look at page 50, that's important, because this diagram here is what shows you why the figure 3-1 shows you exactly why these process groups are not project phases. And the reason is why. Because when you start the project, you see the first arrow that says interface start project. So that's a little gate. So that very beginning, you see initiating processes, right? Then you go to planning, and you look at how the arrow goes down, then executing. But around that, you have monitoring and controlling. So once you start initiating, you start monitoring and controlling too. Pretty much covers all. It applies to all of the phases. So it's not. That's why it's not a sequence. That's why it's not a good idea to call. That's why process groups are not project phases. That diagram there exactly explains why. So it's very important to understand that. Okay. So it tells you monitoring and controlling processes occur at the same time as processes contained within other groups. Thus, the monitoring and controlling process is pictured as a background process group for the other 4 process groups. That's exactly why the process groups are not project phases. Now, I want to make sure that you understand something. In some places, some companies, I've seen it, they call it the same, but that's kind of misleading. For the purposes of of our of what we're covering here, for the purposes of the class, those are, for us, the process groups are not going to be project phases. Okay. So another the project management process groups, they're usually linked by the outputs which are produced. So yes, because when you're going to see the sequence, usually the output of the previous process is going to be the input for the new one. So that's how they're linked. You're going to see that, and a lot of the inputs are going to be the same. You're going to see that we cover them. Okay. Then we're going to start, and this is, if you go to page 52, they tell you again exactly what I was saying just a second ago. Process groups are not project life cycle phases. They are not project life cycle phases. In fact, it is possible that all process groups could be conducted within a phase. You can be doing a phase of the project, and you can be applying all of the 5 process groups within that phase of the project. So as projects are separated into distinct phases or subcomponents, such as concept development, feasibility study, design, prototype, build, or test, all of the process groups will normally be repeated for each phase or subcomponent. Yep. So that's why it's not a good idea to process groups are not project lifecycle phases. Okay, that's important to keep in mind. Kind of figure 3-3, it shows you the interactions. I mean, you can start taking a look at that. I mean, that's start with the sponsor. I mean, the project statement of work, business case, agreement, and then you start with the process, do the initiating process group. Those are the first input, and then the output, you apply the tools and techniques. If you look at the arrows, and then the output is the project charter. We're going to cover that in detail, but you see how it goes with the sequence. Then you apply the planning process groups, and then the output is some project documents you see, and so on. But there are different interactions between all of them. Okay. So let's talk a little bit here before we go in detail. We're going to start with the process groups. So the first one is initiating. Very, very simple. Initiating is the initiating process group. It covers the process groups that are performed to define a new project or a new phase of an existing project by obtaining authorization to start the project or phase. Within in this phase, what really happens is that the initial scope of the project and the initial financial resources are committed. You also identify the internal and external stakeholders that are going to interact, and a stakeholder is it's either like we said before in the project framework, anybody that is affected by the project, and or institution or individuals that are affected and are going to interact within the project, or they can influence the project, they're considered stakeholders. But the ones that you really want to, some of them are going to be more influential than others. So the ones that have more influence in your project, those are the ones that you need to focus on. Your sponsor and different people that have some influence and power, and those are the ones that you want to manage. If the overall outcome of the project is identified, and this is when the project manager is assigned, and all that information goes into a document called project charter, and also a stakeholder register. So that's where that information about the internal and external stakeholders, that goes into a register. This is a very important, the next sentence, I want you to really understand it and have it clear. When does officially the project becomes authorized? When does the project officially start? And that happens when the project charter is approved.
When it comes to them getting done on him, I've been good.
So that's when the project officially starts, when the project charter is approved. In the PMI world, the sponsor will be the one working in creating the project charter, which is a document that has high-level information about the project. It has high-level information about the goal of the project, high-level information about the financials of the project. It has a high-level information about the scope, high-level information about the internal stakeholders. So it's pretty much of that charter has a lot of information, but it's high level. It's not detailed. That will allow you to put together the initial information, relevant information about the project. So usually under PMI, the one that creates the project charter is the sponsor. In the real world, most likely the project manager is going to work with the sponsor to create the project charter. But in the PMI world, which is what we're following here, the project charter is created by the sponsor. And after the project charter is created, that's when the project manager is assigned to the project, so you can start working on it. So, and it even tells you that although the project management team may help write the project charter, this standard assumes that the business case assessment, approval, and funding are handled externally to the project boundaries. So it means that before the project even starts or exists, the business case, the approval, and the funding is handled externally outside. Like it, it happens. It happens like that. So before the project even exists, the approval, the business case assessment, and the funding are actually handled. So what is the purpose of this process group? Well, the main purpose is to align the stakeholders' expectations, what the stakeholders are expecting, the outcome of the project, with the project's purpose. And then you try to give them some visibility about the scope and objectives, and also show how the participation in the project and its associated phases can ensure that their expectations are achieved. So you're going to show them that you're going to have them engage in the project, and then to make sure that their expectations are achieved. So these processes, these initiating processes, they help you to set the vision of the project, what's going to happen, what's going to be accomplished by the project. So this is when you start defining some important elements like the success criteria, and it also helps you to understand and also define customer satisfaction, what they're expecting, and some how the deliverables are going to be accepted. They can happen at different levels: the organizational level, program portfolio, and if that's the case, it will be outside of the project level of control. So it also depends on the way the organization works. So I don't want to go into planning yet. I just wanted to start to give you this overview because we're going to go in detail in regards to initiating. So planning, you have some brief information, some initial information about the other ones, but I'm gonna skip now for now. So let's go to page 60 and then page 61, which is one of the most important pages on the entire PIN book. So on page 60, we are introduced to the knowledge areas. So we already said that we have 5 process groups, right? Okay. What are the 5 process groups?
Initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, control, and closing.
Okay. So now there's another element that is also a division within project management. You have process groups and you also have knowledge areas. So the 47 processes are grouped into 5 process groups and 10 knowledge areas. So we have the 10 knowledge areas are integration, scope, time, cost, quality, human resource, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder. So we have 10 knowledge areas. I want you to, on page 61, it is very important that if you can make a copy of this, if not, I can make a copy for you, but I want you to learn this page. Memorize it if possible. Because this page would allow you to understand where you are in the project, and when you're asked a question scenario or based, if you understand where you are in the project, chances are that you're going to come up with the right answer. But you need to know this page. Page 61. That's the mapping. So it ties the process. If you see, all of the 47 processes are covered, and then if you see, you have on top in a horizontal way, you have the process groups, and then vertically you have the knowledge areas. So you see, under initiating, there are only 2 processes. Those are the only 2 things that you do during initiation. You develop the project charter and you identify your stakeholders. You don't do anything else. Then you move to planning. In planning, that's where the project manager spends most of his or her time. Why? Because if you can see, if you do the count, there are 24 processes in planning. You're supposed to spend most of your time doing the planning, and then when the project moves to execute, when the project is actually in the development phase or and then moving on to executing process group, as you can see, there's only 8 processes, and then you're monitoring and controlling the work that goes around. There are 11 processes, and then again in closing, there's only 2 processes again, so a total of 47. All right, so you can see how the processes are divided. That's why, and let me tell you, in the test, you're going to be tested into these 5 process groups, and you're gonna be tested in what process. But guess which process group is the most important? You think?
Planning?
Yes, you have to do well in planning in the test, because if you don't know planning, you're not going to pass the test. So there are 24 processes in there that need to be covered. Okay, so that's how project management is divided. Now remember that we said before, I mentioned to you before, that we were going to be talking about something called mnemonics. So I'm going to share with you the way I was able to learn to memorize the 10 knowledge areas is on page 61. I made a copy of it, right? And then it was, for me, at least for me, maybe for you it's different, but at least for me, it was hard to learn the long words like integration, scope, time, cost, quality, human resource. I mean, it's kind of hard to learn the actual words. They're long words, but you can learn a phrase. Learning a phrase is easier. So, what was the phrase that I was using? Well, the phrase that I learned was I for integration, SEE for scope, two, the number two for time, COPS, COPS, the COPS, the popo, quietly having coffee, reading paper samples. I know that it doesn't make any sense, but it's easier to learn, although it's easier to learn that phrase. I see two cops quietly having coffee, reading paper samples. And if you take the first letter of each word, that way you'll remember what it is. So, oh, hi, oh, that's integration. I see, oh, scope. Two, time. Cops, oh, cost. Quietly, quality. Having, human resource. Coffee, communications. Reading, risk. Paper, procurement. Sample, that's stakeholder. So write down that phrase, and that's how you can easily learn the words. And of course, you gotta read them a lot. I mean, make a copy or make a copy of page 61, print it out, and review it and learn it, because it's gonna help you a lot to understand the mapping of the project management process groups and the knowledge areas. So all the processes in there. Did you write down the phrase?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
So
see
yeah.
two cops quietly having coffee, reading paper samples.
hmm That's the one that I use. So I mean, it helps a lot. So that way you'll be able to to know them, to learn them easily, to memorize them. That's a little trick. So
No.
let's start here with the first. Let's start with the first knowledge area. Let's start with integration.
Uh,
So we're gonna go. Um,
I'm interrupting class. I'm sorry.
there. Well, you know what? Let's go. Let's go by process group. There are two ways that we can do this. So let's go by process group. So the first process group is initiator, right? In page 63, we can go either way. Let's try it.
hold on, 1 second.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, listo.
All right. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's
But when you're you have this happening, and it's like
let's do, and here we're gonna go back and forth. So maybe
I'm not getting it right. Like I had one casual conversation after going for business purposes.
you
I don't understand. I don't take and smoke for today. Like all of like your manager does.
hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to
So so let's start with the first process. If you go to page 63, we're gonna cover
And I come early every day.
Integration management.
10, 15, 30 minutes.
yes, project integration management. So this is basically all the activities to identify, define, combine, and coordinate. So make sure that you unify and coordinate all the processes and the activities within the
I
project.
can make twice as much money.
So so we have
It's not. Like I don't care how much money.
it includes resource allocation. You can make some trade-offs among competing objectives and
And then say another
alternatives, and you can. This is where you manage the different interdependencies between the different project management knowledge areas.
You know, I literally just say whatever, but
Okay.
that
So
I don't know what it was, but
so the first process
that day,
is develop the project charter.
Juan passed by and was like, Christine, why are you so mean to people?
Bro, I can't.
What are you saying? How am I mean? Like I don't understand what you're saying. He was like, well, I'm not at liberty to say it's confidential, but because it was brought up to me, I
Hello?
have to say
Yes.
something.
No, I gave
Like,
it.
what do you mean? Like, I don't
Your mic
understand.
is very powerful. I can hear the entire conversation.
Because he always does that.
One sec. Shut up.
Don't tell me to shut up.
He said shut up.
Oh my god. Wait, how are you to shut up?
Ay, ay, ay.
And, you understand
Okay.
All right, bro. So the first, thanks. I'm sorry about that.
No,
So
sorry.
So the first process is to develop the project charter. So you have this is where, remember the document that we were talking about that has it's is the document that formally authorizes the existence of a project. So once that's created, that means that the project is already started. So the project starts as soon as the project charter is created. I want you to remember that. So that provides a project manager. It formally authorizes the existence of a project and provides the project manager with authority to apply organizational resources to project activities. So that's the very beginning. Then you work on developing the project management plan. This is where you're gonna get different from all different knowledge areas. You're gonna get a lot of other. The project management plan is like the combination of everything. You're gonna have that's where you have your scope management plan, your project time management plan, your project cost management plan, your project quality management plan, your project human resource management plan. All the different plans, the 10 different plans that you have, this is where they're gonna be those are the subsidiary plans they're going to be integrated into a comprehensive or holistic project management plan. So one thing that I wanted to clarify here, usually what you see in project and a lot of people make the mistake, a lot of people call it the project management plan, but if it only has dates, the activities and dates and durations, that's a project schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that a lot of people use the term project plan, and what they're really saying is project schedule. So make sure that you don't that you understand that
No way.
if it's only activities or tasks with duration and dates and resources assigned, so that's a project schedule. What you see in project, that's usually project
My
schedule.
dad showed me years ago. This
So
guy,
that
the same as my dad. Like my
so
literally they're both the same.
that's a point that I wanted to make. So then you have direct and manage project work, monitor and control project work, perform integrated change control, and close project phase.
But he's telling everyone to get off Facebook.
So
I can't. I'm done.
so this is what I was telling you. So the first process,
Going to people's computers, like that's like
and that's the sequence that you have. The first process, develop project chart. I'm on page 66.
and then
Is that's where you develop a document that formally authorizes the existence of the project and provides the project manager with authority to apply organizational resources to project activities. The key benefit, what do you get out of this, is that you have the project is has a well-defined start. You also define project boundaries, and you also create a formal record of the project. And it's a way that shows commitment from upper management regarding the project. It means that it's authorized and that it's going to go that the project is actually going to happen. That they're going to follow through with the project. It shows commitment. So then you'll see what I was telling you before, the inputs. What are the inputs that are going to be part of this of the project charter, developing the project charter? So the first one is the statement, the project statement of work. So that's an SOW. It might be that SOW might have part of the scope information of what they want to do. Then there's usually a business case. Why are we doing this for the organization? Then if there's any agreements with other companies or any type of contracts or any type of legally binding documents, then that's also might be part of the project charter. Then you have enterprise environmental factors, which are for example, market conditions, organizational culture. So those are enterprise environmental factors. We're going to cover them in detail. And then you have organizational process assets, like any policies, any templates or even any systems that the organization might have. So all of those are organizational process assets.
So say
those
like
are the inputs.
So say like the update of Clarity, is that affecting an organizational process asset?
Clarity would be an organizational process asset, yeah. And then an enterprise environmental factor. Remember when, like 2 years ago or a year ago, there was a Carnival ship that had a problem in the Gulf of Mexico. That's an environmental factor. So that affected the cruise industry. So that's outside of the organization, but it's part of the environment. So that could affect, that affected in some capacity. That took a toll on the market. So that's an environmental factor. Or right now, I'll give you another example.
Like what happened today?
Cuba. What's going on with Cuba right now? So Carnival said that they want to. That's an enterprise environmental factor.
What about what happened today with U.S. Airways?
I can't. I think we're all up to something.
Well,
do you see me right
the computer glitch?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're all gonna walk out of this.
Oh,
isn't that an enterprise factor?
That would say yes. That will be more of an enterprise environmental factor. Yeah.
I mean, you stop the whole company from running.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So definitely an enterprise environmental factor. Well, these are the things that can affect the project. So, that's definitely that. And then, what are the tools and techniques that you're gonna be? So let's cover them. We can have some. There's a little bit more information about that. So basically, what the project charter does is a partnership between the performing and requesting organizations. In the case of external projects, there is usually a formal contract, and but even if it's an internal activity, like most of the projects that we do, it's still used to establish internal agreements within the organization to assure proper delivery under the contract. So the approved project charter formally initiates the project. That's when the project manager is identified and assigned as early in the project as possible, preferably while the project charter is being developed and always prior to the start of planning. So the project manager starts working on the project when
When the charter is given.
when the charter started to be developed, correct. And that's an initiation. Mhm.
Wait, so the PM starts when the charter is being created, or once the charter is created?
When the charter is being created.
Okay.
But look at what they tell you then. The project charter should be authored by the sponsoring entity.
Uh-huh.
So the sponsor should be the one creating, but in reality, the project manager in the real world, project manager usually helps with the creation of the project charter. According to PMI, it should be sponsored by the it should be the sponsor, the one that creates the project charter.
Arroyo, it is a sponsor.
Yeah, it is.
Because the way, I mean, they come up with the statement and everything and the justification, and then they submit it to capital planning.
Yes, yeah, it is a sponsor. Yeah,
And then a PM is assigned after it's approved.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They follow that PMI. Mhm. In that way, they do. Some other ways they don't, but in that way they do.
Most.
Hmm.
Okay.
So the project charter also provides the project manager with the authority to plan and execute the project.
Mm-hmm.
It is recommended that the project manager participate in the development of the project charter because that will provide him with some understanding about the project. So the more understanding, so then they tell you the projects are initiated by an entity external to the project, such as sponsor, program, and project management, or PMO. So that changes basically it depends on the organization. So the first portion that we have, the inputs for develop the project chart. The first is the business need. The business need is kind of the justification, and that's part of the statement of work, which is a description of the product, services, or results that are going to be delivered by the project. That's what an SOW is, a description of what's gonna be done. So it has a business need. It might be a market demand. It might be regulatory. It might be a legal requirement. It might be some government regulation. So that's the business need. Why the project is um, being done. Usually the revenue ones are associated with market demand. The scope, the product scope description, and it's product, not project. It's product scope description. Product scope description gives you the characteristics of the product, service, or result that the project will be undertaken to create. It should document the relationship between the products and services or results being created and the business need that the project will address. So it's a product scope, not project scope. And the strategic plan. Strategic plan documents the organization's vision, goals, and objectives. So that's the first input. The second one is the business case. The business case might be a market demand.
Totes. We should sit
It
there
could be an organizational need. It could be a customer request. It could be a technological advance,
Alright, I'm gonna let you go so I can do this.
a legal requirement, and
And
so
then I'll
on.
have to email my
Then you have
Can you imagine? I didn't get to my paper because I was
the agreements. These are usually they are used to provide some
don't feel like
initial intentions for the project. They might be contracts, memorandums of understanding, service level agreements, SLAs, letter of agreement. So basically, that contract happens when the project is performed by an external customer. So that's when agreements come into place for the most part. Then the enterprise environmental factors, like we were saying before, marketplace conditions, organizational culture, or any industry standards or governmental standards or regulations, that 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 rule or regulate the industry they need to follow. For example, if you're in the medical device industry, you're going to be regulated by the FDA, and you have to follow the FDA standards. Um, if you are in the healthcare service provider world, you're going to be regulated by HIPAA. You're going to be regulated by several. Uh, there are several standards that you have to follow. HIPAA regarding information, and so on. So it's a it's a heavily regulated environment that you have. Um, so those are part. That's an input to the project chart. And then, last but not least, the organizational process assets, which are the processes, policies, any templates, any historical information. That's also an organizational process asset. So that now that you have the inputs, now you are going to apply some tools and techniques to those inputs. So the first one is expert judgment. Expert judgment is basically your experience. I mean, you apply that might come from not just you, but also from other units or departments within the organization. You might have some external consultants that might come and help you provide some expert judgment. You might have, this is when you use SMEs in the area. Let's say that your project is building houses. I mean, and within your organization, you might have architects, you might have engineers, civil engineers that are SMEs in specific areas. I mean, some of them might be experts in, I don't know, structure, like a structural engineer, and they might be your SME for the structure of the house, and then the architect for the design. And so on. So that's the expert judgment that comes from different places. It's specialized knowledge.
Hmm.
Then another facilitation technique, another tool and technique that you apply is facilitation techniques. This knowledge that you're gonna get from the subject matter experts, there's a way you gotta use some facilitation techniques to get that knowledge out of the experts. You do brainstorming, you do conflict resolution, you do problem solving and meeting management. So all those meetings that we have, I mean, ideally that's a facilitation. Ideally, you're conducting them properly and getting the information from the teams.
Mhm.
And but you can use brainstorming. There's several techniques that you may use for that. And then after you apply those two tools and techniques, the output is going to be, what do you think is the output? What do you think is going to be the output of this, the develop project charter?
So you can start the project manager to start the project.
No, the output. So if you're developing the project charter, The output is going to be the project charter.
Document.
Yeah, it's the project charter. Yeah, that's it. And we look at the end of page 71. It's the project charter. That's the output. So remember, because you did in many processes, you're going to see develop something, and then the output is going to be that something. So always make that association. So if you're developing blah, your output is going to be blah. So in this case, you're developing project charter, then your output is going to be the project charter. So I want to really make stress the fact that that the project charter formally authorizes the existence of the project. That's when the project starts. When the project charter is created, that's when officially the project starts. So make sure that you keep that in the back of your head because you might have a question related to that. So make sure that you know when does the project start, when the project charter is created. Okay.
Okay.
And it has some high level requirements. So what do we have in the project charter? Where we have some business needs,
Justification.
justification, correct, assumptions, constraints, the high level understanding of the customer needs, high level risk, high level requirements, summary budget, summary milestones, stakeholder list, approval requirements. The project manager is assigned, and the name and authority of the sponsor authorizing the project charter. So it's really all that information. But remember, this is a 50,000 feet view. It's really high level. You have some information. The project's starting to at least you have your high level understanding of some of those elements that were mentioned. The purpose of the project, the high level requirements, some assumptions and constraints. So all of that is documented. So it's key. This project is this process is very, very, very important. Now, I think I don't want to get you. I really want to go by process group. So we're gonna jump to process. So that's the first one. So we cover. If you go to page 61, we cover the process 4.1, which is develop the project charter. Then the next one is identify stakeholders. That's the next. I think it makes more sense if we go by process group. So we're gonna jump to page. I'll tell you in a second. We're gonna jump to page 393. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going by process group and not by knowledge area, okay? There are 4 other processes under integration, but I want to follow the sequence that we have under process groups.
Got it.
All right?
So identifying stakeholders.
Correct. So we are on page 393. The second process that happens during initiating is identify your stakeholders. So you have your project charter with your high level information about the project. But now you also need to identify the people, groups, or organizations that could impact or be impacted by a decision, activity, or outcome of the project. So who's going to be affected by the project? Who has influence in the project? Who is going to be influenced by the project? So that's important. The stakeholders. Yeah, you need to start identifying. So, like I was saying before, it's the same sequence. You have inputs, tools, and techniques, and you have outputs. So then, if you look at the inputs, one of the inputs that you're going to have for this is the project charter. So you have even though it was an output in the previous process, it is an input in this process. So this is where why? Because some of that information might be there. Some of the information that will allow you to identify those stakeholders is it might be contained in the project charter. Then what else? You might have some procurement documents, some contracts, and then your two friends, the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets. So we already understand, we're at page 394. The stakeholders that are comprised of people and organizations such as customers, sponsors, performing organization, or even the public. Like in a mega project, let's say a highway in Dade County. The people that live in Dade County are stakeholders of that project.
Mhm.
They're affected by it. They might not be they might not be the most important stakeholders. I mean, in a way they are. It depends on the way you look at it, but they're going to be impacted by the project, so they're stakeholders. So that's something that is important. They might be at different levels within the organization, and they might have different authority levels. Some of them might be external, some of them might be internal. But it's important to identify the ones that have influence and they have authority that can actually have an impact on your project. So you're not going to be you got to focus on the ones that have the highest influence on your project. Those are the ones that really can make or break your project. So you need to work on those relationships. But everything starts with identifying who they are. So of course it's going to be the sponsor. If you're doing a project for accounting or for finance, I mean, you want to identify the people within finance or accounting, the managers at least, are going to be impacted by the project. They're going to be your stakeholders. They might have a high level of influence. You want to identify not only the managers, but the people that are going to be actually working with. Let's say that it's a software that you're, or a new system that you might have. So you might want to not only identify the managers, but the people that are going to be actually working with the software, because there might be some of them that do not want to change, and they might change. There might be some. There might be resistant to change, so you need to address that, and everything starts with knowing who they are. So that's why you have to identify your stakeholders, and you can measure their expectations, and you can manage them to make sure that they're on your side. So you want to build the relationships that you need to build in order to ensure the success of the project. So that's why you do it. So the first input is the document that we were talking about, the actual project, the chart. Yes. Then another input that you use here is the procurement documents.
So all of the orders of what you need.
Yeah, pretty much. Anything with suppliers, anything there might be some information that who's signing the contracts. They might be key project stakeholders. So the ones that sign the procurement documents, there might be key stakeholders. So you might want to get information from who are the ones that are signing those documents. And then you have your enterprise environmental factors again, the organizational culture, governmental or industry standards. Then you have your organizational process assets. Then you have your tools and techniques, and the one that you're going to use here is a stakeholder analysis. So basically, this is it's a technique in which you gather and analyze quantitative and qualitative information. Okay, quantitative is very subjective information. It's your assumption based on things that you think is going with your gut, with what you think not just your opinion, but basically the way you feel about something based on your own experience. So that's usually subjective, very subjective, and um, that's qualitative. And then quantitative is it's based on facts, based on data. You have numerical data that backs up the claims that you're actually saying. So that's what the data is showing. Numerical data usually. That's uh, that's quantitative. You can quantify that information.
That,
So technique when you systematically gathering and analyze quantitative and qualitative information to determine whose interests should be taken into account throughout the project. So you're not going to be able to spend, and it comes to this, you're not going to be able to spend, you have to focus on, remember as a project manager, you have a lot of things going on. So you're not going to have enough time to dedicate to, to be able to manage every single stakeholder that you have in the project. So you're going to focus on the ones that are really important, the ones that can affect your project in a way that they could even prevent the project from happening, prevent you from the ones that have enough influence to shut down the project. So you need to focus on the key stakeholders. So, but in order to do that, you have to use this technique. You have to identify them, and you have to apply this stakeholder analysis to determine who they are. So determine the influence, and so it helps you to even identify their relationships among themselves with the project and other stakeholders. And those are ways for you to possibly you can leverage that to build some coalitions or partnerships that can help you to be successful with the project. So it's important to understand who they are and who are the ones that are key and have more influence regarding your project. So that's why you perform this analysis. So basically, how do you do it? So these are steps. If you go to page 396, you identify all the potential stakeholders with their roles, requirements, knowledge, expectations, and influence. Then you analyze the impact. Then you assess how they're going to react in various situations. And with all that information, what you work is in some sort of grid. Like, for example, if they have high power and high, you have power and interest. Look at the grid that you have on page 397. So if you have some stakeholders that have high power and high interest, you see the grid. So you have to manage them closely. But if you have someone that is high power and low interest, you have to monitor them. Then some of them you gotta keep satisfied, and some of them you gotta keep informed. So it's in regards to the ones that are well, maybe not a high it's not high, it's middle. Then you so let's say that it's medium in regards to power, medium in regards to interest. You want to monitor them. But the ones that have definitely high power but medium interest is keep satisfied. The ones that have high power and high and a high interest, you definitely have to manage closely and but the ones that have kind of high interest but medium power, you want to keep them informed. So that's kind of how the grid works. That's the analysis that you're doing.
it looks like the BCG marketing mix matrix.
The what mark? The what now?
The BCG marketing matrix.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're similar. They can be similar to other tools. So that's kind of how you do the. So that's the power interest grid. That's what you have on page 397. Then you have a power influence grid, kind of similar. Then you have an influence impact grid. And then you have a salience model that describes the classes of stakeholders based on their power, ability to impose their will, urgency, need for immediate attention, and legitimacy. Their involvement is appropriate. So that's the salience model. Okay. Then your expert judgment is another tool that you apply here. Again, that's that subject matter expertise that you can get from upper management, senior management, other units within the organization, and those key stakeholders may even tell you about other stakeholders that need to be part of this. So you get expert judgment is another way to do that. And then you might even get it from other project managers that might have worked in similar projects. That they can tell you that directly, or you can check on their lessons learned. Any other SMEs in the project area, there might be some external industry groups and consultants, and even professional and technical associations, regulatory bodies, or NGOs that can provide that expert judgment. How do you get it? You might have individual consultations or interviews, or you can have a panel format, surveys or focus groups. Another tool that you use is meetings. That's you gotta meet with people to get their to get your understanding of their and get that information. So do some profile analysis meetings or project meetings designed to get a better understanding of major project stakeholders. They can be used to exchange and analyze information about roles, interests, knowledge, and the overall position of each stakeholder facing the project. So if you understand that, your chances of success, if you know who your stakeholders are, your chances of success are going to increase. So then what is the output? It's a register. Register is just a list. Think of it as a list that has some elements. What are the elements? It's going to have the identification information, then the assessment information. Identification information is just the name, the position, the location, the role in the project, and the contact information. Think of it as a spreadsheet. Just a list. Just
like PeopleSoft, Navigate, People Finder.
Or no, not even. That's too high tech. Think of it as a Excel spreadsheet that has a list of people with their name. Think of it as a spreadsheet with the name, organizational position, location, role in the project, and contact information. You're going to be creating this. Then the assessment information, the major requirements, main expectations, potential influence in the project phase, phase in the life cycle with the most interest, and then the classification. You need to know if they're internal, external, supporter, neutral, resistor. Some of them might be resistor. They might be against the project. So you want to know, you need to know that.
Okay. Resistor in any sense of the project saying it's a dumb project, or we don't want to pay $10 million or anything like that.
That might be a resistor, yeah. You might have someone like you might have a stakeholder like that.
Yeah, perfect. Cruise Plus example. Resisting how they want to do
things. Oh yeah. There's a lot of resistors. And then the stakeholder register, and this applies to all the documents in the project. It has to be consulted and updated, because nothing in project management is static. Everything is changing all the time. So you gotta keep these documents updated, your registers. So everything is changing. The conditions are changing. So you want to make sure that you have updated information. So this register you might want to revisit. Remember, people change and the roles change, and they're at the beginning of the project, they might not be a key stakeholder, but throughout the project, they might become a key stakeholder. So you might want to keep track of that. And it's 10:26. Let's take a 5 minute break or 10 minute break.
Okay.
Let's take a 10 minute break, and then we'll continue. Okay.
Listo, avísame.
All right.
Bueno,
Yeah, I'll let you know.
okay.
Thanks, Ron.
Bye.
Hello.
Listo.
Listo, brother. Okay, so we cover initiating. Those are the two processes in initiating. So, do you have any questions, bro?
No, I get it.
Yeah, okay. Now let's go back to page.
Let me just recap the two processes. The two processes:
Uh-huh.
identify the stakeholders.
Yeah, the first one is develop the project charter. Yeah.
And then the second one's project stakeholder management.
No, the first one is develop the project charter,
Uh-huh.
and then the second one is identify the stakeholders. You go to page 61. Go to page 61 for a second.
Uh-huh.
So process 4.1 and 13.1. So develop project charter and then identify stakeholders.
Okay.
You see one at the beginning and one at the end.
Yeah.
So we're done with initiating. So now planning. The first one is 4.2. And that's going to be develop the project management plan. We are on page 72. So, okay, like I said before, develop the project management plan. What you're doing is you're defining, preparing, and coordinating all the subsidiary plans. Which are those subsidiary plans? Project scope management plan, project time management plan, project cost management plan, project quality management plan, project human resource management plan, communications management plan, risk management plan, procurement management plan, and stakeholder management plan. So you have subsidiary plans and the other 9 plans, because of the other 9 knowledge areas. So all those, each one of those knowledge areas has a plan. So in integration, that's when you put everything together, basically like the master plan. So it's like a central repository, a central document that defines the basis of all project work, because it covers all the different knowledge areas. That's
The integration.
that's what you have in integration. Yeah, develop project management plan.
Plan, that's
So
good.
so what are the tools? What are the inputs? I'm sorry that you have for this. The first one, the project charter. Why? Because you have some information there that you're going to be using. Then the second one is outputs from other processes. Why? Because you have all the different knowledge areas interacting with this. So you're going to have some outputs or from other processes that are going to be inputs for the project management plan. Then you have the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets. You see that they're very common as part of that. So then you have we already know what the project charter is, and it defines the boundaries, the high level boundaries of the project, and is the starting point for initial planning throughout the project, throughout the initiation process group. Then you have output from different processes, because as you can see from sections 5, I mean, you have from scope, from time, cost, quality, human resource, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder. From sections 5 through 13, you have outputs that are going to be also that are going to be inputs for the project management plan. You might have some baselines that are changes and updates that need to happen. All of those are going to come from all those different processes, and they're going to end up here as an input to the project, to the actual project management plan. So then you have your enterprise environmental factors. We've been covering them. your industry standards, your project management body knowledge, project management information system. Um, for example, Microsoft project will be a enterprise environmental factor. Then you have your organizational process assets. Remember the templates, the change control procedures, any historical information and lessons learned knowledge, any standardized guidelines. Those are the organizational process assets, which we're on page 75. So what do we use as tools and techniques? So the first one again, the knowledge from the subject matter experts. We use expert judgment so we can make the plan. We can tailor the plan to meet the project needs. So we can develop technical and management details that have to be included in the project management plan. So we can determine the resources that are needed and what are the skill set that is needed to perform the project work. This is where we define the level of configuration management that needs to be applied on the project. This is where we determine which documents will be subject to formal change control processes, and this is where we prioritize the work, so we can ensure that the project resources are allocated to the appropriate work at the appropriate time. Okay, so that's why we use the expert judgment. That comes from your architects, from your resource managers, from the experts, basically, or from the team. I mean, it's not just you; it's a collaborative effort that needs to happen. So, what's another technique that is used? Then you have again the facilitation techniques. You're going to meet with these experts. And you're going to try to get the information from them using some facilitation techniques. There some brainstorming, problem solving, and meeting management. So you can get the information from them. So you can help teams and individuals to achieve agreement on how to accomplish. This is where you try to set the direction of that is needed in order to accomplish all of the project activities. So that's why you use facilitation techniques. And what do you get? What is the output? What is the output of this process? So we're developing the project management plan. So what is the output?
The plan.
The project management plan, correct. So this project management plan is the central document that describes how the project is going to be executed, monitored, and controlled. It covers all of the subsidiary plans, and it has project baselines for scope, schedule, and cost, and also the different subsidiary plans for all of the different knowledge areas. Scope, requirements, schedule, cost, quality, process improvement, human resource, communications, risk, procurement, stakeholder. And may also include the life cycle selected for the project, details of the tailoring decisions specified by project management team, description on how the work will be executed, change management plan that document how changes will be monitored and controlled, configuration management plan that documents how configuration management plan will be performed, requirements and techniques for communication among stakeholders, description on how the integrity of the project baselines will be maintained, and key management reviews for content, the extent of and timing to address open issues and pending decisions. So that's a big repository that is going to cover all that information.
The baselines alone is a lot.
Yep. And the way you can have the project management plan, it can be as detailed as you want. can be composed of one or more subsidiary plans, and the level of detail can be tailored to the project. So it really depends. Um, Once the project management plan is baseline, it may only be changed when a change request is generated and approved through the perform integrated change control. So basically, this can be modified because remember what we said before. Any of the documents you have to review them because they can change, but change is allowed in project management, but it always has to be controlled. And how do you do that? You do that through a change request.
To the CCB.
So I thought they called it CR, but CCB, so change control.
Well, we do see CRs when it's asking. Well, in our at least for Royal, CRs is when we're asking for more money,
Oh, okay.
and then it runs through the CCB, which is typically the PM and the lowest level stakeholders. I'm assuming, no,
Yeah. So then, yeah. Well, that's exactly what it is, a change control.
because I mean,
So
what are they? They call it change control board, and I heard they call it something else. I don't know. I remember
yeah,
when I was doing Horizon, they called it something else.
yeah, they kind of change. They kind of change. Well, basically,
Same thing.
at the end of the day, yeah, it's a change request, and then it has to be approved by the change control board.
Uh-huh.
And if it's approved and documented, it happens. You can go ahead and do the change. And what do you measure in that change? In the change, the change request normally contains what the change is and what the impact is going to be for the project. The impact meaning the impact on the timeline, the impact on the cost, and the impact on the scope, which might be the actual change. So what you're trying to actually do with the change. So you have that has to be evaluated, and then a decision is made by that change control board. And if it's a yes, yes, go ahead and you incorporate that to the you go ahead and do execute on the change request. And if it's not approved, you don't do it. But they have to it has to go. Change is allowed, but it has to be controlled. Okay. So, and then it tells you, if you look at table 4-1, it shows you the differences between the project management plan and some project documents. So you can review that, kind of see the differences. So that's so you do that's the second process in regards to the develop the project management plan. So now we're gonna so we have covered 4.1, 13.1, and 4.2. Now let's go to scope management. If you go to page 61, and I really want you to make a copy of it, or if you don't have it, I can make a copy for you. Uh, so you have this and read it and as much as you can so you can learn the processes. So the next one, we're going to go to page we're going to go to page 107. So let's talk a little bit about scope management. Scope covers the work. What it covers all the work that is required to complete the project.
Mhm.
That's what scope management is. So you have to define and control what is included in the project and what is not included in the project. What is included in the project, that's the scope. What is not is out of scope. So, but it's defined. I mean, the project you cannot have open. It has to be very well defined. The scope of the project. Otherwise, um, that might be a risk to your project, and it could jeopardize your project. So you really want to define the scope. So for that, and you have to understand that there are two things that we need to understand: product scope Those are the features and functions of a product, service, or result. The features and functions, that's the product scope. But the project scope is the work that needs to happen so you can deliver a product, service, or result. So it's the work that is going to be performed. Okay, so that's it's important to understand. It's the difference between product scope, features and functions. Project scope, the work performed to deliver a product, service, or a result. So,
Did the PMI mention product scope anywhere?
they do for you to understand the difference,
But they don't question your.
but they don't know.
Okay.
But typically they don't. I mean, they could somewhat somehow, but you got to understand that product scope is just the features and the characteristics of the product. I'm sorry, the actual product and the characteristics. So that's what it is. But but you need to understand that the project scope is the work that needs to be done. Okay, within the project. So it has to be defined. So the first one is plan scope management. So this is where you create a scope management plan. That's what you're trying to do, a plan how to do it, and in which and with the scope is going to be defined, validated, and controlled. So why do you do this? Because you want to have you need guidance and direction on how the scope is going to be managed throughout the project. So that's your key benefit. The scope management plan is going to provide that guidance and direction on how the scope is going to be managed. So the first input is an output of the previous process. You see, it's the project management plan. Yep. And the second input is the project charter.
So basically, as you go down the 5 process groups, it incorporates the previous one.
As an input, yeah. Usually, the output of the previous process is an input to the next one. So then the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets that we cover several times. So those are the 4 inputs that you have. Then you apply expert judgment again with the SMEs and external consultants or even people from different units within the organization. And the other tool and technique that you apply is meetings. You know, those facilitation techniques that you use. You manage those meetings so you can get all that information from them, and then you can come up with the actual. In this case, you're going to have 2 outputs. The scope management plan, which is which describes how the scope is going to be defined, developed, monitored, controlled, and verified. And this is a major output into the developed project management plan process and the other scope management processes. Because it sets up the way process for preparing a detailed project scope statement. That's important. It enables the creation of a work breakdown structure. We're going to be covering that in detail, but basically a work breakdown structure is a hierarchical structure with different levels that you use to decompose the work that needs to happen within the project, what you're going to be doing with the project. We're going to be covering that later on. Then how this work breakdown structure is going to be maintained and approved, the formal acceptance of completed deliverables, and the process to control how requests for changes to the detailed project scope statement will be processed. And the second output is the requirements management plan that has how the requirements are going to be planned, tracked, and reported, the configuration management activities, so how changes to the product will be initiated, will be analyzed, traced, tracked, and reported. The requirements prioritization, how to prioritize regards to requirements, the product metrics, and the traceability structure to reflect which requirement attributes will be captured on the traceability matrix. So those are the two outputs, the scope management plan and the requirements management plan that you have. So let's leave it here. We have covered 4 processes, and so we still have 43 to go. But we started already in planning. So we're gonna spend most of our time in planning, and we're gonna be covering and tackling those. But the sequence and the approach is the same. I want you to remember you have inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs, and that's how we're gonna break down all the processes to get that understanding. You have any questions?
No.
So tomorrow we're gonna continue with collect requirements.
Okay.
All right.
So basically, most of the PMBOK is based on the 47 processes.
Yes. Divided into the knowledge areas and divided into the 5 process groups. Yeah. But you go.
Cable.
But it's the PMBOK. The essence of the PMBOK is page 61. That's how it's divided. That has the 47 processes. It has the 10 knowledge areas, and it has the 5 process groups. So that's what the PMBOK covers.
Okay. Bueno, señor.
All right. So tomorrow at 7, no?
Sí.
Okay, we'll do 7 to 9. Then.
Okay, hermano.
All right.
All right, hermano. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks a lot, man.
Nos vemos mañana.
All right. Bye. Hey, take some test on
Sí.
initiation. Now you can do initiation and some planning. Well, at least some of it, but you can start.
Sí, I'll go tomorrow.
Hitting that, yeah. Because that's gonna reinforce the what we're covering, you know.
Bueno.
And we'll do later some tests here. I mean, I want to also do that part, but I want to cover with you the processes, and then we'll do that.
Okay.
All right.
Bueno.
All right, bro.
All right. Bye.